Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, 6-1 feels very, very good, but the way the Suns are winning isn't exactly what we expected. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Game Day Wednesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so click that follow or subscribe button and join thousands of other Suns fans doing what they have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Joining me, as always, from the Wild West Valley, how are we feeling on this Wednesday?
I know exactly what just happened there. I'm so good. You could say former Fox Sports 910 producer.
Well, you're also a credentialed Suns media member now.
I
so
am a credentialed Suns. I have
You're
done
right there
a
with
lot
me.
of different things. I've covered a bunch of different stuff. Cardinals, Suns. That was funny. I just seeing it, the things twist in your head as it goes.
Yeah.
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm tired, but I'm good. But that's because that Suns game went so late last night, and
Yeah.
you and I basically could have had a slumber party at Footprint Center.
1:15 a.m. I think is when I laid down in bed and probably wasn't
Yeah, me
asleep
too.
till 1:30. So
Yeah.
one of
Oh, you
those
fell
nights,
asleep
but
that
we're
quickly.
back here. We're back here, and we're gonna go through back and forth on some things that we've gotten wrong about the Suns so far. Now that might sound negative, but it's not going to be. Of course, they're 6-1. They're playing great basketball. They've been killers in the clutch. A lot of great things to be hyped about with this Suns team, but already we're 2 weeks in, and there's some things that we thought were going to be no-brainers for this Suns team that have gone a little differently. And where we're going to start is Yousef Nurkic. And rather than just piling on, Ben, or stating the obvious, we've already spent a lot of time talking about his struggles, getting benched, why they closed with him last night, all these sorts of things. We're going to be a little more specific than that. And where I was wrong is that I bought the hype that this dude was going to be able to shoot the ball. And it's too early to say he can't, but he is off to a not-so-great start. He's 4 of 19 from deep to start the season. And just for reference, we're 7 games into the year. He only shot 90 last season, so he's on pace to blow through that, and yet he's still not making them. It's like 40% of his shots right now are coming up from deep, and he hasn't looked even remotely comfortable any step of the way. And so, Ben, when I look at this and why it matters that I'm wrong about it isn't just, oh, I thought this guy would start hot and he didn't. Like, that sort of doesn't matter that much. It's that you don't just shoot threes to shoot threes and show off and like have guys on YouTube putting, highlight reels up for you. You do it because it's supposed to space the floor and create better offensive opportunities for the team. The Boston Celtics, yes, it's nice that Kristaps Porzingis can bomb away, but what that really does is that Jason Tatum can just fly in from the perimeter and dunk the ball 10 times a game because there's so much space opened up when the defense has to respect Kristaps Porzingis because they know he'll make that shot. So when the Suns' opponents, Ben, are not caring that Nurkic is taking those shots because they're not believing that he's going to make them, and so they don't need to close out, and they don't need to have a man out there with him, everything gets bogged down, and you look up, and the stats tell you the Suns' offensive rating is almost 8 points worse per 100 possessions with Nurkic on the court so far. That's not all because he's missing threes, but you were hoping heading into the year it would get even better than it was last year, and it's gone the opposite direction.
Do you think they're gonna change that up? Like, do you think at some point they're going to have to stop Yousef Nurkic from shooting threes? Because I mean, I've been to every home game so far. They are not even contesting with him. I mean, sometimes if they're next to him, they'll put a little bit of a hand up, but just so they don't get benched. But I don't think this is gonna work, Brendon. Like, I don't think the 3-point shooting thing is gonna work, which is probably the best argument for people who dislike Yousef Nurkic. And I don't know. Do you think that they change that up?
Well, the question is, what
How
else
long until
would
they
you have
don't?
him
Yeah.
do? What else would you have him do, right? Because that the whole reason that they had him come into the season, and we were talking after media day, that Bud basically gave a homework assignment to Nurk from like 3 million miles away while he's in Europe over the summer to try to get better at this shot, was because the alternative is running your offense through him. We knew that wasn't going to happen necessarily, or we had a sneaking suspicion that that might have to evolve. And so to be an off-ball center, he's not a lob threat. He's not somebody that's going to run down the paint in a pick and roll, jump up and smash it over the top of a defense for a big dunk. That's not his game. You don't want to post him up too much because, hey, it's 2024. That's not efficient anymore. And so shooting more was kind of like, we got to make this work. And so one thing I guess I would say, if they, as they try to adjust and reevaluate his role within the offense, Ben, is from a scoring standpoint and kind of a playing off of others standpoint, is maybe just have him purely space in the corner. Like, that's what I kind of thought we would see, was that he would take more from the corner. Obviously, shorter shot. Obviously, doesn't affect your spacing quite as much if somebody's just there on the weak side in the corner versus where they can sag off if he's like at the top of the key and that defender's way more in the middle of things. But I haven't seen anything to think, oh, just put him in the corner and he'll start draining threes. So I don't even know if that solves anything. It's a real problem for him.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything at this point for them to be able to continue with this as religiously as they have. Maybe there's a way where you can initiate the offense through Yousef Nurkic at the top of the keys and still try to space out the floor artificially. But kind of sticking with that, one of the things that I think I was incredibly wrong about, and I'll put this on the Yousef Nurkic and Tyus Jones thing, was and this is be kind of very close to Tyus Jones thing, so what I'll talk about later with Ryan Dunn, but I didn't expect Tyus Jones to have so much of an impact offensively. I wasn't of the belief that the Suns offense was going to be fixed by a ton just because Tyus Jones is on the floor. And I was half right because I don't see Tyus Jones with the ball in his hand as much as I thought I would. But you mentioned this 2 days ago. They just look more calm and present and more willing to attack the opposing team's defense if Tyus Jones is on the floor with them, because at least they know at the end of the day they can just swing it over to him and all will be well in the world. So with Tyus Jones, I was wrong on that. But then on the inverse, kind of going back to the Nurk thing, last year, Kevin Young, Frank Vogel ran a lot of the offense through Yousef Nurkic because he was a superb passer. And that was one of the things that I kept beating the table for with, listen, man, this guy's going to be able to initiate your offense in different ways. I just didn't anticipate that he would have such a hard time doing it in Budenholzer's offense. And if he can't figure it out, I just don't know how much he fits with this team because he can't shoot threes. I mean, I was skeptical of that from the get-go. I didn't expect him to be Brook Lopez. But his inability to shoot the long ball and his ability to be effective with the ball and not turn the ball over so many times, I mean, that's an issue with Yousef Nurkic where I'm starting to believe maybe it's not going to work out so wonderfully as I once thought it was. Even though last night he was fine. He had still some really bad offensive moments.
So we've covered Nurk, and I think we're both on the same page. To be positive on the side of Tyus with the surprise here, they were bottom 5 in the NBA turning the ball over last season. They're middle of the pack so far this season. So even though it has felt like, oh my God, this again, some of these games where the turnovers pile up, just a reminder, everybody, it's not nearly as bad as it was last year. They're already improving by leaps and bounds in that department, and a big part of that is courtesy of Tyus just being that stabilizing presence, that kind of go-to initiator and outlet when they just need to kind of have some structure. The other thing, and I've said this time and again, but it's worth repeating here, as they've kind of evolved their offense from just being, Nurk / Booker / Beal initiating 2 more of Tyus, I think that has allowed them to unlock KD in a way that is obvious watching this team. The quick hitting actions, the mismatch hunting, even just the not forgetting about him that I think Suns fans have been excited to see when it comes to Durant. I think a lot of that is the connection between Tyus and this big three. Obviously, the coaching staff implementing it, but really that point guard presence of they can just do what they're trying to do quickly and more easily than we ever saw last season. And so when you come back to the Nurk side of it, it's like it's not the wrong call to minimize him. And it speaks to what we talked about when we dissected his troubles earlier last week, was like he's just a role player right now. He's not a featured piece, and that's a lot because Tyus has come in and just fits so neatly right away.
Yeah, I would agree with you and everything you had just said about Yousef Nurkic. I just strongly wonder how long the leash is for him, because we've seen him get benched already a couple times, and last night they wrote it out with him. Mason Plumlee cannot be a guy. Maybe that, this is kind of interesting. Maybe even Mason Plumlee kind of starts to see the writing on the wall. You and I yesterday when we were watching the Suns before halftime had ended, Mason Plumlee's out there chucking up threes on his own. I don't know, like anyone. No, I'm just saying that anyone that wants the Mason Plumlee should start of a Yousef Nurkic narrative, whatever that may be, if it's even out there. Like that's not even a good option either. I don't know how many big men really work with this offense, so that's also the slack that I would give to Yousef Nurkic as well. I just wonder how long the leash is going to be for him.
Yeah, of course, they have to have a better option in order to shorten that leash. Let's get to another another thing we got wrong about this team. Mine is which side of the ball they're winning on. We'll hear what Ben's is coming up next. First, today's show is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, though, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, as well as Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. All you got to do is answer a few questions on their website, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, the medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No embarrassment or hassle there. No insurance is needed. One low price covers everything, and with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. That's hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions do apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling. What do you got for us as far as another thing you thought would happen with the Suns that has not held up through the first couple weeks of the season? You're muted.
Of course I am. I thought Ryan Dunn was going to be a capable NBA player. I thought he was going to be an elite defender. I thought he was going to be all these different things for the Suns. I did not expect it to happen right away. I, as the president of the Ryan Dunn fan club, have been the guy I've been like, hey, this guy was perfect for the Suns. Athletic wing, can get to the rim, explosive, can catch some lobs, super athletic, but he can't shoot the ball. In the summer league, this was backed up as well. He was not very good offensively in the summer league. Yeah, he's locking guys down defensively, but how much stock can you really put in that? Because you're playing against what is not even G League level players in the summer league. And so Ryan Dunn coming in and being a lockdown 3-and-D guy, you talked about this a couple of days ago. We were texting about it, and you're like, hey, at some point, when do we talk about Ryan Dunn being one of the best 3-and-D players in the NBA? And that kind of brings me to this. Like, obviously, I'm okay with being wrong with it, but I think the Suns need to be okay with being wrong with it as well. Ryan Dunn has worked himself into the lineup of not being a 15-minute, 16-minute a night guy. He's got to creep up a little bit more into those low 20s. Last night, when they stuck with Nurk, they didn't go small. Ryan Dunn doesn't really see the floor late in that fourth quarter. You cannot have that happen with what a lot of people think, you, myself, and some other people, that he's one of the better 3-and-D wings in the NBA. Those are gold. Those are currency in the NBA. I mean, I guess I won't say he should play over Allen yet, but given his frame and size and his ability to shoot the ball so far, you cannot keep that guy on the bench because he's not Grayson Allen. He does not have that trigger finger that's just going to be on always. You got to get him some reps. You got to keep him warm. I don't like him coming in cold off the bench for playing for 5 minutes and chucking up threes. I think that's a recipe for disaster, but he has been awesome for this team, and even I didn't expect him to be this good.
So if we're talking about right and wrong and what we kind of thought would happen versus reality here, it's kind of evolved since the Ryan Dunn experience has continued, right? Like in June when they drafted him, we were like, okay, crazy athletic defender, fits the mold of what the Suns need, but let's see about the offense. Who knows if he even affects this year's team, impacts this year's team at all. Then you watch him in preseason, and you're like, well, of course, he has to play. The offensive concerns were overstated. This dude's ready. And by the way, he still fits the mold of what the Suns need. And then now it's kind of in this in-between zone where we're kind of wrong about how much they've needed him because they're still winning. You would have thought, they couldn't possibly start 6-1 without him stepping up because of how desperately they seem to need a big wing like that. And then at the same time, we're also kind of almost like on a nightly basis getting proven wrong. Like, okay, this will be the night that he has to play a lot. This will be that he has to go in against Tyrese Maxey. And so I guess it's just in this zone, Ben, now where it's like, as long as they continue to win and they can find enough answers on the defensive end, we are kind of uncertain about Dunn and his role and how much they need him and all this sort of stuff, but they're still winning. And that's kind of the biggest stat that's going to matter right now. But that gets us to the defense overall, which is something that I will say I was wrong about. And I kind of talked about this after the Sixers game on Monday night, where I said, like, this is a perfect example of a defensive game that's just good enough to win. You still give up 110 plus to a team without their best player, but you buckle down and win the game. They've actually been better than that most nights. I'm kind of wrong. I was kind of wrong against the Sixers to say, oh, it's just good enough. Their defense has been better than good enough most of the season. They're fifth in defensive efficiency so far this season. They are, statistically, if you didn't watch a single game of the Suns this year and you just looked at where they rank in offense, where they rank in defense, some of the final scores of these games and everything else, you'd say, oh, this is a defense-first squad that's kind of putting the clamps on their opponents and gutting out some close wins. That's not how we would describe this team, but yet the stats tell you that's exactly what they've been. So I was dead wrong about that. I thought you would say they're fifth, third, first in offense and 20th in defense. It's the exact opposite right now.
Yeah, and mention some of the teams they've played. They haven't exactly played the Charlotte Hornets and the Chicago Bulls. They've played the Mavericks, the Lakers twice, the Sixers with Paul George, I might add, and the Clippers twice. All of those teams, if I'm not mistaken, were playoff teams last year. So it's not exactly that they're playing easy opponents. You know, it is very shocking to me that a Frank Vogel, and I'll get to this in just a minute, a Frank Vogel head coach who was supposed to be the defensive coordinator for this team, they were fine defensively in the second half of the season, but Coach Bud has got these guys playing defense way better and with more effort than I've seen with guys like Bradley Beal and players like Kevin Durant. That is something that I believe is just, again, another anecdote of Budenholzer and what he's done for this team, especially defensively, man, because some of the teams that they've played, I didn't expect them to be 6-1 through 7 games. I told you I'd be okay with 6-4 through the first 10. I mean, we're looking at a team right now that with the Heat coming up and other opponents, like, I don't all expectations are just gone for this team at this point. I don't even know what to set for it.
So as far as the defense goes, just to put it in some context, they are limiting easy opponents' points for their opponents. They've been a good rebounding team. They haven't been fouling. That's all good. They're pretty good in terms of preventing shots at the rim and preventing makes at the rim, even when the opponent does get some of those shots up, which inevitably is going to happen. And then something you always want to look for early in the season with the defensive numbers, Ben, is the opponent three-point shooting luck. I say that to you. I'm really saying that to the audience. Is like sometimes, look, we're 7 games in. You could just see a team be third in defense out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, because they've just had a bunch of cold shooting nights. Three-point shooting is random. I know it sucks to hear that, but in the grand scheme of the NBA regular season, fans just need to remember that is almost the defense has almost no impact on whether their opponent makes threes. But that's not happening for the Suns. The Suns have actually been middle of the pack in three-point shooting for their opponent. So it's just kind of gone according to normal, and they're still 5th in defense. So what that all tells me is this defense is real. It's sustainable. The guys who are stepping up have to continue to do so, but if they can, I think you're looking at a Suns defense that might continue to prove us dead wrong and be much better than we expected. 2 more things we got wrong to wrap up the show. Next. First, today's episode brought to you by Built Rewards. Listen up, renters. Do you ever feel like you're stuck in an endless loop of rent payments? I think Ben and I can probably relate. Just watching that money vanish into thin air. Well, it's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards, and that's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to then jet off on a dream vacation by putting your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500-plus airlines and hundreds of thousands of hotels and properties around the world. You can also use those points to book studio fitness classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment, and more, designed to meet your lifestyle. So pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use that URL so they know we sent you. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's episode also brought to you by the Gametime app, the best place to buy any ticket. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. They only show you the incredible deals on great seats, filtering out the fluff so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Go to the page, whether it's in a city or for a specific event, and those Gametime Picks right up top in the app will show you here's the best value for what you're looking for. No questions asked, no doubt about it. You pay the best price for the best seat you can find from a value standpoint all through Gametime Picks. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks by downloading the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Wrapping up the show. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter if you have not already. You click the link down in the show description below to check that out. Just type your email in and get the best analysis and news about the Suns and the NBA right in your inbox. Support us. Beat out the Lakers fans, the Kings fans, everybody in the division, everybody in the conference. Show people what Valley Sports fans are all about by signing up and supporting the show. Ben, what is the last thing you got wrong about this Suns team so far?
I'm on record on the airwaves, on my own show, on here, that I didn't think firing Frank Vogel was going to change anything. I didn't think so. Like, yes, the offense was incompetent. The personnel was bad. Like, there was a lot of things for this Suns team last year where I was just like, I also didn't envision, like, this is where I give myself a little bit of slack. I didn't think Ryan Dunn was going to be this good. Plus, at that point, I didn't even know, like, it was going to be a possibility that he would even fall that far. And I didn't know they were going to get Tyus Jones. So those are two big factors for this team that did help change it. But for the most part, I was like, I'm not going to fire the coach. I don't think it's all his fault. These players have some of their issues. But after the Ramona Shelburne article, and I read Bradley Beal's of he had to literally question basically his existence on this earth at one point. It was so toxic. I will get to the on-court play in just a second. But it was so toxic for this team that Bradley Beal is having ayahuasca trips in his room trying to figure out what went wrong last season. And Tyus Jones wants to show up, and Budenholzer, if the Suns win 55 games this year, if they really exceed all expectations, if they're a 1 seed, he should be coach of the year. This was a tire fire last year. A tire fire that they got swept. They were the laughing stock. Trade Devin Booker, trade Kevin Durant. The on-court product we knew would get a little bit better, but it seems like this team respects Budenholzer, and it seems like he's not worried about lighting a fire underneath some of these guys you-know-whats. And I didn't expect it to be this much of a difference. I thought maybe a little bit, but it has changed everything, where I'm like, what was Milwaukee thinking getting rid of this guy? They really thought he was the problem? And so, yeah. Also, I'm like, why didn't the Suns hire this guy last year? But
I think he wanted the year off. And what's funny about the Milwaukee thing is the whole reputation, and I'm on record, even before Bud was even an option, I said this about Monty. Once upon a time, I've said it about other coaches in other places. It is the number one thing when a team has a playoff letdown, that the narrative and the verdict about that coach becomes that they don't make adjustments. It is the most go-to talking point among NBA analysts and fans and anyone who watches this sport to say when a coach loses in disappointing fashion, as a favorite, whatever, they didn't adjust. And guess what? The reality most of the time is an adjustment wasn't going to do anything. We can talk from a Suns standpoint, right? The one that I always think of is why didn't they try Frank Kaminsky in the finals? If you're telling me that Giannis was going to be stopped by Frank Kaminsky from scoring 50 points in that game 6, you are absolutely...
Stop. That's Frank the Tank to you, Brendon.
Sorry.
He was gonna stop Giannis in his tracks.
But to get back to the... I was ranting there, but the Bucks thing with Bud was, Jimmy took their hearts out in that first round. How could you ever lose to an 8 seed? Because Jimmy Butler was playing like a freaking monster. What are you supposed to do? How do you adjust? Chris Middleton couldn't guard him. Drew Holiday couldn't guard him. None of those guys want to shoot the ball late in those games, and you fire your coach for it, and then, one man's trash is another man's treasure. He comes to Phoenix, and it kind of reminds me, Ben, of the Suns have now been on the right side of two of these things where Bud is kind of like the Chris Paul of coaches at this point, now that he's been on his third team here. Every place he goes, the first season is this unbelievable honeymoon phase where the team's fan base is like, this guy's making it look easy. I didn't know our roster could do this. I didn't know our team could be this good, and we're already seeing it. So, yeah, I was on board with you. I was very late to the Fire Monty party. I was very late to the Fire Vogel party. I'm always a grass is not always greener guy when it comes to coaches, but this one has proven us wrong. Anyone who doubted Bud could come in and overhaul this thing. He's shoving our words back into our faces right now.
What was yours?
Quickly, because I brought it up in the surprises episode that I did last week, and I don't want to overdo it, but it's just something to keep an eye on, which is pace. The Suns, we thought they had to play faster to win, right? Of course, they were just this stuck in mud offense last year. If they're going to improve, they get Tyus, they get Bud, they're going to have to be a better transition team. And that's not really been the case. They're 16th in offensive seconds per possession. They're 11th in transition frequency. They're not really pushing and slamming on the gas every possession like we might have thought. But there's one other piece to it, Ben, that caught my eye that could be a good sign for the future that maybe we can end on. I'll throw it at you for what you think. So the Suns are only ninth in fast break points, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. But they're only 18th in points off of turnovers. So what that tells me is when they are pushing the tempo, they're scoring. It's honestly been, they haven't created turnovers. That's like the one thing defensively they're not doing. And that's kind of going to be the final ingredient to me with this team is if they can find a way to create some turnovers, they're going to be able to play faster, get some easy points, make their defense even better. And I think we'll be watching this thing click at an even higher level.
Yeah, oftentimes I see this team go out in transition, and I don't feel like they're ever off of transition from turnover. So you're just basically confirming what my eyes have seen. But when they do it, I feel like they don't make teams, they don't let teams get away with that, where I don't know what the Suns' transition defense is, but I can't tell you how many times I see
shaky.
I can't tell you how many times though. I'm like, I said to you last night, I was like, why isn't Kevin Durant running with this guy? If Beal gets this stop, you could still be able to run with it. But I get it. That's nitpicking at this team. So
well, in their transition offense, like I think part of it is like again to loop back with Bud, it's like we're seeing these guys more confident with these transition pull-up threes than I feel like I've ever seen. This entire roster is like a threat where if they're down the court and the defense isn't set, they're just going to pull up from three, and it's working. So you're seeing a lot of these components come together. They haven't been this just like sprinting Sacramento Kings type team. Maybe they'll never quite get there, but I do think that this will actually make us look even more right as the season goes along. One last thing. You're more on the prediction bandwagon than me. How are you feeling about the Heat game?
You mean I'm a loudmouth? They're going to beat the Heat. They're going to beat the Heat.
I just gotten burned too much on predictions, so I retired. But you're unfortunately still feeling good about it.
Unfortunately, I feel like I've been pretty good with the Suns' predictions. I said they'd lose to the Lakers on Friday night. I said I thought they'd beat the Mavs. I think they'll beat the Heat. I mean, at this point, the expectation now is for them to beat these teams. There's no threat that the Heat have to clearly expose something that the Suns don't do well. Those are the teams on the road that I'm going to be like, Suns are probably going to lose that game. But the Heat don't have that. They don't have a specific person or player that they can just go after and beat them. Like, they're not going to do that, especially on the road, cross-country game. No, Suns are going to beat them. And we'll be there for
a tight home game on Monday to Sacramento by 1 point.
Sabonis.
Yeah. And Jimmy does seem to have been playing better so far this season than the down year he had last year. The Heat are healthy, which is like a rarity. So this is a real team, but they're only 3-3. And I agree. The thing you said at the beginning is going to be the reality for the Suns team until they dip again, which is they're going to enter every game as the favorite, and they kind of have to live up to that. So haven't watched Miami at all this year. It should be a fun one. And we'll be there, like you said. We'll also have an episode for you guys right after the game, so hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. Become an everydayer, and we'll catch you then.